ॐ ज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकाय चक्षुरुन्मिलितं तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वते देवे भगवति प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी राष्ट्रप्रदेशकारिणे वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्यैव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna. So we are discussing on the mind intelligence mechanism for developing self-control or self-mastery. I'll start by a disclaimer. I am a struggling seeker, and what I speak, it's not that I live it. I struggle against my own mind also very frequently. But these are weapons. These are weapons which you all can use, and to the extent we learn to use them, to that extent we can better fight and survive and win in the inner war. So I'll explain some verses and we'll recite the verse only once, and then we'll go to the concepts. Basically, in this inner dynamism for inner war, for gaining self-mastery, I'll talk about 4 stages, and we'll take 4 metaphors from the Bhagavad Gita which illustrate these 4 stages. But first, we'll start with the concept of the inner hierarchy. So let's recite this 340. Are all of you able to hear me? Yes, hear me? Yes. Okay. Can you decrease this slightly? I can't hear myself with this. Slightly at least. Okay. Thank you. So this is in Krishna is telling over here, Indriyani Mano Buddhir. So let's show easy to understand. Krishna says, Indriyani Mano Buddhir. Yeah. Asya Indriyani Mano Buddhir. Sorry, this previous words. Yeah. Indriyani Paranyahur. Krishna says, above the senses is the mind. Indriyebhya Param Manaha. Above the mind is the intelligence. Manasastu Parab Indriyebhya Param Mana. Above the senses. See, above the body are the senses. Above the senses is the mind. And Manasastu Parabuddhi. Above the mind is the intelligence. Yo Buddhe Paratastu Saha. And above the intelligence is the soul. So it can be visually depicted like this, that there is the outer world. Okay, let me make it full screen. Yeah. So above the outer world are the outer world is filled with the sense objects. Above them are the senses. Above them is the mind. Above them is the intelligence, and above it all is the soul. So this is the mechanism of our inner world. So let's recite the verse. Indriyani Paranyahur Indriyebhya Param Manaha Manasastu Para Buddhir Yo Buddhe Paratastu Saha. So here, Krishna is giving us this hierarchy of our inner world to help us understand what goes on inside us, and then we can deal with it properly. There are broadly 2 kinds of people in the world. Some people are wise and some are otherwise. And it is not just that there are these 2 kinds of people out there. Actually, it seems that the 2 kinds of people exist inside us itself. Like we are sometimes wise and we are sometimes otherwise. Especially when we have to give advice to others. No, we are sometimes amazed. What jewels of wisdom are coming out of my mouth? But when we get provoked, when we get angry, when we feel jealous, when we feel greedy, at that time, the way we act, we start thinking, who is that person? How could I have done something like this? How could I have been so foolish? How could I have been so terrible? So we ourselves act otherwise at times. So it's almost like there are two persons inside us, and it's like which of those persons will manifest when? It seems as if we have no control on it. In India, cricket is very popular. When I go to America, I was just 3 months in America. So there, my organizers had to remind me repeatedly, don't give cricket examples. Because in America, when people hear cricket, they think of an insect, not a game. So there it is. Insect. Cricket is an insect. Cricket is not. But anyway, so in cricket, there are some teams. Some days that most of you know which team I'm referring to. There's one team which on some days it will play so well that even the best team in the world will smash them completely to pieces. And some other days they'll play so terribly that even gully cricketers will seem to be better than that team. So what happens is, which team will come on which day, nobody knows. So some days they'll be outstanding and some days they'll be outstandingly poor. So for us, it seems when we are functioning in life, which side of us will appear when? Will it be the wise side or the other wise side? It seems very unpredictable and it seems uncontrollable, and that can be very destabilizing. So, so the Gita explains that inside us actually there are these two things, the mind and the intelligence. The broadly, we can say the intelligence is the wise side inside us. It is rational, it is short, far-sighted, it is careful. So that is the wise side. And then which is the other wise side? That is the mind. The mind is impulsive, the mind is short-sighted, the mind is driven by emotion and desire. So because of that, so now both of these are inside us, and whichever takes control, if the intelligence takes control, then we act in ways that are wise. If the mind takes control, we act in ways that are otherwise. So one way to understand this metaphor or this particular visual depiction is to compare it with the computer system. In the computer system, there is the hardware, the software, and the user. So, in the hardware, there are the sense objects, which are physical, and the senses also. They are all part of the hardware. The mind and the intelligence both are a part of the software. And beyond that is the soul, which is the user. So, we could say the intelligence is like the protective software, like the antivirus program or the parental controller, filter program, which protects us from unwanted influences and soft viruses and other things. Whereas the mind is the vulnerable part of software. Not that the mind is intrinsically bad, we'll talk about it. The mind is the vulnerable part. It can get infected by various softwares, various viruses and other malwares and other things. So when the mind gets infected, just like the software when it gets infected, then it may start deleting data from the computer itself. So like that, when the mind gets infected, it starts working against us. So with this basic concept of how inside us what works, the mind and intelligence is there, and whichever is in charge, whichever takes charge, accordingly we will function. So based on this, we can say that there are 4 stages in the inner power dynamics, the inner tension that is there. The first stage is where there is failure without struggle. What that means is that the mind tempts us, the mind drags us, say, towards sensual pleasure, and the intelligence goes along with it. The intelligence doesn't even oppose it. Intelligence says, yeah, what's wrong with it? That's fine. So Krishna talks about this possibility in the next, he says that he says our contaminating desire can be situated not just in the mind, but also in the intelligence. And when that happens, that is when there is no struggle inside at all. Have any of you heard the word rationalize? Rationalize? Okay, what does it mean? Anyone? I know you know. Anyone else? Rationalize? Somebody raise hand here. Yes, please. Oh, did you memorize the meaning from a dictionary just now? That's very precise meaning. Thank you. Thank you. I don't think anybody has given that precise a meaning. To give a more acceptable reason for a less acceptable action. So we justify basically. So, so for example, when we rationalize, at that time we use our intelligence to justify what our mind is proposing. So, for example, say about 30, 40 years ago, what happened was that, maybe not 30, 40, 50, 60 years, around 40, 50, 60 years ago, there was this widespread notion that smoking is actually cool. And most movie stars would be shown smoking. And initially, when the studies started coming, showing that actually smoking leads to cancer, that it has many toxic effects on the health. So initially, the 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 scientific research was suppressed by the tobacco industry. And slowly, when that research started coming out, they started saying, initially it was, you cannot suppress the research. They started saying, actually, it is just correlation, it is not causation. No, it is. They said, maybe there is some chemical in the brain, chemical deficiency in the brain, which makes people both smoke and have cancer. So you're understanding? Instead of saying smoking causes cancer, they said maybe there is some deficiency in the brain which makes people vulnerable to smoking and vulnerable to cancer. So this kind of giving a reason for something which is actually not true. Okay, this example sounds complicated. You may have heard this story. Once there was an anti-alcoholic campaigner, and he wanted to demonstrate to people how dangerous alcohol is. So he decided to do a demonstration. He gave a fiery talk about the dangers, and he said, "Now I'll demonstrate to you." So he had a beaker in which he had kept alcohol, and he had got a small box. He had kept an insect. So he opened the box and he threw the insect into that bottle. And the insect fluttered for a few minutes, and it sank down to its death. So what happened? He looked at everyone, and all of them started looking around. He says, "What do you learn from this?" Now, nobody was ready to say anything. And one person was very cheerful, very enthusiastic. "What do you learn from this?" He said, "When we drink alcohol, all the germs and worms in our stomach will die." So, this is rationalize. Hmm? So, what happens is there is no inner opposition. So, here at least what I have shown is the mind is taking the intelligence along. But sometimes the intelligence takes the mind ahead in that direction. The intellect justifies. So this is the time which is actually the most dangerous, when there is no opposition at all. So what is the spelling of rationalize? Is one person. Somebody gets it? Yes, please. Okay. LIZE. Rationalize. Yeah, that's American English. SE is British English. But that's fine. Thank you. So now there is another spelling for rationalize. RATIONALLIES. Rational lies. So when we rationalize, we tell rational lies. We speak falsehood that seems rational, that seems intelligent, but actually it is deceptive. So this is the stage where there is no struggle at all. One doesn't even attempt to do anything to stop oneself. And this is the most vulnerable stage. And This is one of the dangers of Kali Yuga, that in all ages there have been temptation and there have been people who have succumbed to temptation. But it is only in this age that sin is glamorized. There is good and there is bad, and there are always people who want to do bad things. But it is in this age that sin is glamorized. Like say, when say there are movies in which there are some explicit scenes. Then in the past the word would be used obscene scenes. This is obscenity. This is. But now the idea is that they use the word. The movie has many bold scenes, or this actress has done many bold scenes. Now, what is the idea? Now, if somebody is exposing their body that is bold, that means somebody who doesn't expose their body is a coward. So what is happening is, it is thought is corrupted by corrupting language. So here, intelligence is used to justify what is bad. That's the first stage. And today we live in a world where we can very easily get caught in this stage, where not only is our mind contaminated, but even our intelligence gets contaminated. If we are fortunate, then we grow up with some values, we grow up in a culture where we learn some things which nourish our intelligence. And that is the second stage. So the example for this is Krishna talks about the chariot of the mind. He says it's almost like the chariot mind is like the chariot, and we are situated on that chariot, and wherever the chariot takes us, we just go on it. So the mind proposes and we go along with it. So Krishna talks about this in the 16th chapter. Yeah. So he's talking there about greed, but it can apply to other things also. So I'll explain the verse and then we'll recite it. Idam adya maya labdham. This much I have attained. Imam prapse manoratham. Manoratha, the chariot of the mind. I will attain this much. I got this. Prapse idam asti idam apine. Oh, I've got this much money. And bhavishyati punardhanam. I'll get more and more and more and more money. So here the person is completely consumed by greed. So oh, sorry. I keep forgetting. The screen is full. Doesn't go through. Idam adya imam prapse manoratham idamasti idamapi me bhavish chariot. From the metaphor you may have heard, the body chariot. That's different. Mind is chariot and we along wherever the mind is. So here there is no. This is the first stage. Now after that is the next stage, which is hopefully where we rise. That is failure with struggle. In this case, what happens is pulling us in a particular direction. Mind is come on. Okay, just be on social media. Watch this. Go there. Do that. They some we have to study. We get a let's see. Friend has updated. Oh, okay. Let me see what it is. And start clicking one photo and second and third and fourth. There's a part of us, don't waste time to study, but it just goes on. So what happens is at that time the urge overpowers us. So the mind and the intelligence is going in one direction, the mind is going in another direction, but the mind overpowers the intelligence. Now, in this case, externally speaking, the result is the same. And earlier also we succumb to temptation, now also we succumb to temptation. But is there a difference? What is there a difference? How many of you think there's a difference? Okay, thank you. What do you think is the difference? There is no rationalization. Okay, yes. Something more? Sorry? Loudly? We'll feel atonement. We will later do some atonement. Okay, that's a good. Intelligence is mature. Yes. So basically, you can say, just put in all of you, what you said is right. What I'm in terms of evaluating ourselves. Sometimes what happens is we come to this level and we keep relapsing, we keep succumbing, and we may get discouraged. But this is a higher stage because here we need to measure progress not by change actions but by change in intentions. The difference is in the previous level, the intention was to indulge, the intention was to gratify. But here, at least the intention has changed. I don't want to do this, but I'm pulled and forced to do it. So the change of intention, even if that intention is not yet translated into action, at least the intention is changed. And that is to be praised. What happens is that, like a child who just doesn't want to study, the child comes up with excuses for not studying, not studying, not studying. And finally, the child sits down to study, has to do learn some maths, some. The child is not able to do it. And from the external perspective, earlier the child did not do the math sum properly. Now the child did not know the math sum properly. But here, at least the child is trying. And if we are too hard with ourselves, we think, what happened? I tried, I didn't succeed. What is the use? I'll never succeed. No, just the change in intentions is also a sign of improvement, even if there is no change of actions. In our inner struggle, there are many times the results will be discouraging. We'll again and again keep relapsing. So when the actions discourage us, we have to find sources of encouragement where we get them. And that will be, at least I didn't want to do. And my intention was not this. And now this happens when the intelligence becomes stronger. So earlier the intelligence was just going along with the mind, but the intelligence is, so there is the wise part, the otherwise part. The otherwise part is overpowering us, but at least the wise part is opposing. So let's look at a verse from the Gita which illustrates this point. This is 267 in the Gita. Krishna gives the example, Indriya Charan. The senses are always wandering, looking for something. Like, in an affair, one of my friends is in Ukraine. He's just been conscripted into the army, chose to go into the army. Russia, they're conscripting people. They're saying that they have radars which are heat-seeking devices. Means it's a high temperature. That some missile might be. So like that, these are also like radars. They are like pleasure seeking. So they're constantly, where is some enjoyment? Where is some enjoyment? So Indriyanam, they're like that. Indriyanam charatam yan mano. So our senses are constantly looking. Now you are, while you are hearing this class, maybe somebody is coming from behind. Maybe the temperature is too high. Maybe you are feeling a little tired. There are multiple multiple sensations are coming in through various senses. But you are focusing on one sense, ears, and you are hearing. But we are aware of many inputs, but we focus on one particular input. But sometimes what happens is the that there are many inputs coming in senses, and we, without being aware, suddenly focus on one particular input. Like say, if somebody is talking on phone, and then suddenly get the urge, okay, I want to eat, I'm hungry. And now they may not really be hungry, or even they're hungry, they can eat something healthy like some salad or something. But maybe below their table they have kept some cookies. Their hand goes down to the cookies, and they start eating. They don't even realize it, and they're finished cookies. Yeah, what a fool I am! Why did I eat so much? Something like that. So Indriyanam wherever the mind. So they were talking on the phone, but what is their mind focused on the phone and they start eating the food without even realizing it. Tad asya harati pragya. So the intelligence is stolen away. Tad asya harati pragya. And Krishna gives the example for this. Vadur navam ivambas. Just like wind sweeps away a boat. A person is in a boat, that person, we can assume, say, they know how to operate a boat. They know how to drive in a boat. Or if it's operated by oars, they know how to use the oars. It's operated by machine, engine, they know how to operate the boat basically. But sometimes a strong wind comes along. They may want to go in this direction, but they're swept away in another direction. They're swept away in another direction. So such a stormy wind comes up. So my friend right now in America is being battered by one of the severest storms in recorded American history. It's called storm. So I was talking with a friend today morning. He's telling me that there were people who had gone out boating, and what happened is that they have good forecast systems. So they have been warning for the last several days: evacuate, evacuate, evacuate. Almost 1 million people have been evacuated. But some people just neglect warnings. Some people don't get warnings. So this person was in a boat, and his boat, he had life jacket, and he had strapped. When he saw the storm coming, he strapped himself to the boat. His boat was swept almost like 10 miles by the wind itself. And he was deep inside the ocean, and he gets swept, and he came and just hit against the coast. Fortunately, he survived. This devotee is a part of the devotee friend of mine. He's a part of the emergency relief measures. So I said, what were you doing in the boat? Because the boat was inland. Boat was on the land. So I said, how did the boat come over here? The boat was swept from the ocean onto the land because of the stormy wind. Such a powerful wind. So what happens is, the person is expert in boating, the person may get swept away. So this is what happens when the mind gets caught and consumed by worldly desires. The intelligence is overpowered. So indriyanam hi charatam. Sorry. No, please during the class don't be humble. If the word is not there on the screen, tell me, because I am changing the screen over here. I am forgetting the screen is not getting changed. All of you are really good at Sanskrit. You are just repeating the words and you are repeating it without it. Sorry. Hi charat no anuvidhiyate tad asya harati pragyam vam ivambhasi. So tadasya harati pragya. Pragya here refers to intelligence. The Gita uses different words for intelligence. Sometimes it's buddhi, sometimes it's pragya. So the mind overpowers the intelligence. But still, at least in the normal situation, when it's a big stormy wind would not be there. That person will operate the boat nicely. So this is the stage where we all can come to. I'll talk a little later about how to nourish the intelligence. But if we hear philosophy, wisdom, if we hear we read the Bhagavad Gita, if we attend, if we, our intelligence will get nourished, and at least there will be a struggle into it, and we will be able to do the right thing on a larger number of occasions than earlier. Eventually, we may sometimes relapse, but the mind will be, but at least sometime the intelligence will prevail over the mind. That's the second stage. Now, to go ahead, so this is the second stage of failure with struggle. So in one sense, if we consider the mind and the intelligence, among them, the intelligence is easier to transform. If somebody speaks reasonably, oh, I understand, this makes sense. If somebody tells you smoking is bad, okay, I read all and I understand this is bad, okay, I will not smoke. Although I thought earlier it was cool, but now I understand thinking that it is cool will make me a fool. It's not cool. Our intelligence understands. So at the first stage is to intelligence understand. Then after that, now how do we make the mind understand? So to understand how to make the mind understand, we have to understand how the mind works. Sometimes we often say the mind is our enemy. Well, yes and no. We may say the mind is our enemy, but the mind is something always going to. Now, if somebody has an enemy, can kill the enemy. But the mind is not something which can kill. The mind is always. It is better to think that rather than the mind is our enemy, what is inside our mind? Like I said, the mind is like a vulnerable software. So when there are viruses in that software, then that software So inside the mind, there are contaminations. There can be lust, anger, greed, envy, pride, illusion. And these actually torment us. They can mislead us. So here we need to understand that actually when we talk about desire, say something like lust or greed or envy, whatever, this is a feeling that we get inside us. Like I'm feeling greedy right now. I'm feeling angry right now. Yes, it is a feeling inside us, but it is also an impurity inside us. It is not just a feeling that comes and goes. There is some tangible change in our inner world. Let me give an example to illustrate this. Suppose somebody has visited a particular website uh, dozens of times. Maybe take a website like, say, Bollywood.com. They have visited dozens and dozens of times. And then they come to a spiritual talk and they hear about the Bhagavad Gita. They think, hey, this Bhagavad Gita seems interesting. So I want to know more about the Bhagavad Gita. They go on, they open their device and they start typing Bhagavad Gita. And they type B. And what happens? Bollywood.com comes. Now, why? Did they want to go to Bollywood.com? They wanted to go to BhagavadGita.com, but as soon as they type B, what happens is Bollywood.com comes. So now going to Bollywood.com is not just a desire they have. What happened is because they did repeatedly stored in their device memory in the browser's history, and that comes as an auto. So in somebody else, if they type B, maybe Bollywood.com will not come. They're not visiting. So when we say that there is okay, I'm feeling greedy, I'm feeling angry. Yes, it is a feeling, but it is not just a feeling. It is also an impurity within us. And when there is something really inside us, then you cannot expect to get rid of it just by raw willpower. Like explain. Say, suppose somebody has got some infection in their throat, respiratory tract infection, and because of which they are coughing. Now, at one level, coughing is an action. But if somebody is coughing repeatedly, and you tell them, no, don't cough. I'm getting the urge to cough. How can I stop? Just use willpower. I will not. I will not cough. That's not going to work. Or worse still, say somebody's stomach is upset and they're getting loose motions. Use willpower. No, it's not going to work. So when there is actually something wrong internally, raw willpower is not enough to control it. I'll talk about willpower being important, but willpower alone is not enough. Because it's not just a desire that is coming and going. So, like, I will say, I'll type B, but Bollywood.com will not come over there. No, maybe we can do control and we can delete history in our devices. But there's no delete history button for our mind. You know, every action that we do, that creates an impression. That impression is going to be there inside. So, this is where we need to learn to be kind to ourselves. That, what does this mean? That actually, when this happens, that we may, in the previous stage, what happened is our intention was one thing, but our action was opposite. Now we are trying to discuss how we can change our mind so that the mind stops proposing, stops pushing us towards undesirable or unworthy things. So before that we can understand, actually, we need to understand the mind is actually having some contamination, some impressions are there. And they are real things that are present inside. So at this stage, how do we go to the stage of, this is the stage we want to go to now, success with struggle. That means the mind is going in one direction, the intelligence is going in another direction, but the intelligence enables us to tolerate. Tolerate means the desire comes. See, when the Gita uses the word tolerance, it is slightly different. Say in society, use the word religious tolerance. That is different. The Gita uses the word tolerance. What it means is you tolerance as to accept the presence without accepting the influence. To accept the presence without accepting influence. That means greed may come inside you. Jealousy may come inside me, but I won't act on it. I was talking with one devotee, and this devotee was complaining. In America, I was talking with one devotee. This devotee was complaining about another devotee. This and this and that. And I was hearing for some time. I said, Prabhu, I think you are feeling jealous of this devotee. He said, no, I'm not jealous. I'm just extremely unhappy that good things are happening to him and bad things are happening to me. Now, what is that? That is jealousy only, isn't it? But sometimes we are in denial. So, here what happens is that we may all at times feel why is this person succeeding, but we may not act on it. So, we accept we are all human beings. So, sometimes jealousy may come, sometimes anger may come, sometimes greed may come. So, we accept the presence, but we do not accept the influence. So, this is big because the presence is there inside. So I get the urge. You may get the urge to surf the net, the urge to overeat, the urge to oversleep, the urge to yell at others. But we resist. So that is success with struggle. Now Krishna is a beautiful example for this. That is, he says 270 in the Gita. So I'll explain the example. I'll see if I can find a diagram for this also. So Krishna gives the example of an ocean over here. Apuryamanam achala pratishtham. Apuryamanam constantly being filled. Achala pratishtham is that its boundaries are not disturbed. So its boundaries are not disturbed. Achala pratishtham. Samudra pravishanti advat. Just like in an ocean, rivers keep coming. Apaha pravishanti advat. Tadvat kama yam pravishanti sarva. Similarly, desires keep coming inside. Sashanti mapnoti na kama kami. Such a person will attain peace. Now, the most significant word over here is the last word. Kama kami. Now, what does kama kami means? You could put it as the desirer of desire. Kama kami, the desirer of desire. What he means over here is, Krishna is actually very beautifully analyzing this over here. Normally, when we think of desire, does desire flow outside in or inside out? What do you think? Does desire flow outside in or inside out? Okay, how many of you say outside in? Okay. Inside out? Okay. How many of you say both? How many? None of the above? Okay. So, sometimes words differently. So, normally when we use the word desire, I desire something. Means that inside out desire. I desire to eat some sweets. That means, okay, the sweets are over there. I want to go and buy them or I want to get them and I want to eat them. So, normally we think of this inside out. But we can say, and to expand the meaning of the word desire, we can say that suppose we're just walking along the road and we see, maybe there are a dozen sweets kept in a plate. And we see it, in that sense, we can say the desire is flowing outside it. We can put use the word temptation over here for that. But let's simplify for the and use the word desire. So when Krishna says na kama kami, what he means is desire may flow in, but let desire not flow out. Desire may flow in, but desire not flow out. And that is why I use the example of ocean. In ocean, river water comes in. Because the ocean is so big, the ocean doesn't get disrupted. Water doesn't overflow the ocean. On the other hand, if instead of ocean there were a tiny puddle, and in the puddle a river came in, what would happen? It would overflow everywhere. There will be disruption. So the idea over here is that if we want to come to this level of the mind, intelligence winning over the mind, that means Krishna says our consciousness has to become like an ocean. If our consciousness is like a puddle, then any desire comes in, it will overpower us. If our consciousness is like an ocean, then we will not be overpowered. Now, what does this mean? Making our consciousness like an ocean instead of a consciousness like a puddle. So basically, the size of our consciousness depends on the size of our driving purpose. The size of our consciousness depends on the size of our purpose, our driving purpose. Let me explain this with an example. Suppose I gave the earlier example of, say, Facebook. Say in 2 hours your exam is there, and at that time you get a notification on your phone. Your friend edited their Facebook photo. Now, will you immediately go and click what the photo is? No. I have to study. This is important for me. All that can be done later. So that purpose of studying is very prominent in our mind, in our consciousness. And when that purpose is prominent in our consciousness, seeing Facebook, but say your exam is 2 months away, and then you get the same thing. That a friend has updated their Facebook photo. Yeah, I have to study, but I can do that later also. So what happens is that purpose is not very strong. Now, in this case, it is the external urgency has made the purpose very strong, isn't it? That okay, hours away exam, I have to study right. So the point is, in both cases, desire flew in. The desire not flew into the fly, but flew into. But desire, the desire did not flow out of us in the second case or in the first case because urgency was there. In his morning class, was explaining how people say, when I grow old, I'll practice. So what happens is that is the situation where the desire is flowing in and desire is flowing out. But if you understand, we may not live to old age. We don't know how long we'll live. So then that sense of urgency comes in. So what we need to do is we need to, for expanding our consciousness. So the idea over is here there's the mind, here there's the intelligence. So the earlier the mind is dragging the intelligence, even if reluctantly. Now we want our intelligence to drag the mind. For that purpose, we need to happen. We need to strengthen our sense of purpose. We need to repeatedly, first of all, we need to have something important to do. And secondly, we need to remind ourselves why this is important. So the focus cannot be on saying, no, I will not do this, I'll not do this, I'll not do this. That is tiring and it is ultimately frustrating. Just so focus not on saying no to the undesirable. Find something to say yes to. Find something worthwhile to say yes to and focus on that. And that is why here Krishna is saying that many of you may have heard this verse, the word higher taste. How many of you have heard this word? Higher taste? Yeah, thank you. We are all looking for higher taste. So Krishna uses that word a little earlier in 261. Param Jvani Vardate. It's interesting when he uses the word, sorry, it's 259. Param Drishtva. So for us, we may say, okay, I don't have higher taste right now. The lower taste doesn't seem lower to me, and higher taste doesn't seem higher to me. So the lower taste actually seems higher to me. So what do you do at that time? So the Sanskrit word is drishtva. So it's not higher pleasure. Yes, there will be higher pleasure, but here drishtva means what is drishti? Drishti, vision, eyes. So here, even if we can't have a higher taste, we can have a higher purpose. And that is what we can get by our intelligence. So if by our intelligence we understand, now, this is important. I want to do this. See, even ordinary people, well, actually every soul is special. Every soul is special for Krishna. So in that sense, nobody is an ordinary person. But when I'm talking about ordinary, I mean people who have no spiritual connection. Even they, when they are driven by higher purpose, can resist temptation. Suppose somebody is a sports player, somebody is say a cricket player, and they are not very fit. Maybe they are a fast bowler, but they don't have enough muscles fast enough. Then they decide, I want to build my muscles. They go out and do hours of workout. It's not pleasant. And any food which will increase their fat in their body. So sometimes these athletes, the sheer level of discipline that they have, it's extraordinary. And it is not that at that time they're getting any taste in pumping iron. It's exhausting. But what is there? Higher purpose. No, I want to for my country. I want to be a high class fast mover. So that higher purpose can be motivated. So the higher purpose can be there even in our material life. But what the Bhagavad Gita's wisdom gives us is not just a higher purpose, but the highest purpose. The Gita tells us each one of us is a part of Krishna, and each one of us has immense untapped potential. We all can do so much good in the world. We all can become purified. We all can be agents of in the world. And we all can do so much good if we become more purified. So this higher purpose, we need to remind ourselves repeatedly. So the it will take its own time to change. But what we need to do is make our intelligence strong enough. And that's why repeated hearing is vital for strengthening the intelligence. But that alone is not enough. There is something more that is required. So you remember I talked about this earlier, this diagram I showed you earlier, what the hierarchy inside. Krishna says that if we want to win this inner war, there are two things which we need to do. So one is connect the intelligence with the spiritual reality. Is this visible behind? Or it's to you? So connect the intelligence with spiritual reality. You can see this arrow going from here to above. So that is what will strengthen our intelligence. And the second is disconnect the senses from the sense objects. Can't connect, at least create some regulation, some limitation, some barriers. So what happens by this? In between the mind, the war is going on. Trying to do intelligence. And the other side, we want to weaken the mind, or we want to certain impressions inside us. No. But at least we can avoid putting fuel on the fire. So Krishna says, regulate the senses. Smatvam indriya niyamya bharatashava. So if we do these two things, one is connect the sense, connect the consciousness with spiritual reality, especially the intelligence with spiritual reality. So our sadhana that we do our japa, we do our sadhana, all this connects our consciousness and our intelligence. So the Krishna later talks about this as abhyasa. Abhyasa means practice. When we keep doing this, the intelligence will keep becoming stronger. And then we disconnect the senses from the sense objects, or at least monitor the connection, minimize the connection. Suppose somebody is an alcoholic and they say, when the urge to drink comes, I just can't give it. I can't avoid it. Okay, that may be true. But if the alcoholic is about giving up alcohol, suppose imagine that alcoholic's house is on top of the bar. Now they may say, I can't give up alcohol, but they can certainly give up staying on top of the bar. Isn't it? They can go and stay some distance away. Because when the urge comes, if the alcohol is readily accessible, they will immediately drink. But if it is not so easily accessible, then what happens is, see, the mind, it's just come for some time. They come, they stay, there is the urge, and you can say the urge has a surge. It just goes up. But the surge of the urge does not stay for a very long time. So when the urge has a surge, if you consider sine wave, it just goes up. So desire becomes very strong. So at that time, if the object is readily accessible for us, we will succumb to it. But if we have created some barrier, if we created some boundaries, then the object is not that easily accessible. Then we may want, but have past the sine wave, and this comes. No. So external regulation is not full solution, but it is a vital first step, vital first. One of our current culture is that so it's become so less. Say for example, if somebody was in a temple and they got some sensual desire and they wanted maybe wants to go temple physically from here to there. It takes some effort. But what happens in and they can hearing some spiritual couple of other buttons and they will go on some obscene sites. So it's the regular boundaries have become very, very difficult to have. It becomes so we need to, just as the temptations have become more and more accessible to us, that's why we have to ourselves create boundaries for protecting us. You remember earlier, willpower alone is not enough. So what? So I'm explaining that just like if a patient is having a cough or a loose motion, then the willpower alone is not enough. Willpower is required. Willpower is required for what? First, okay, follow this diet. Don't eat all other kind of food, and take this medicine. So don't take all these foods because these are heavy foods. They will worsen your stomach. Take this medicine, even even if it's bitter. So this connection with Krishna, with the soul and with Krishna, with spiritual reality, that is like taking the medicine. That is abhyasa. And this that is like vairagya. That is the regulation. So when we do these two things, so the willpower is required, but that's why I earlier used the word raw willpower. Raw willpower is not enough for curing a disease. What we need is guided willpower. Guided willpower means the doctor guides. Okay, regulate your diet to this and take these medicines. So similarly, if we regulate the temptations that we are exposed to, and we connect with Krishna through the practice of bhakti, we will grow. We hear the same message later when he talks about abhyasa and vairagya. Abhyasa is, so earlier I talked about this example of what was it? Bollywood.com. So now, if somebody has visited 100 times Bollywood.com and they visit Bhagavad Gita once, the big Bollywood.com come, but still they go to Nakama. They won't go to Bollywood.com. They type BHAGAVAD, they go to Bhagavad Gita. Once, twice, 10 times, 15 times, 20 times. Eventually, when they type B, what will happen? Bhagavad.com will come. So in this case, the mind is mechanical. And mechanical means what? If you keep repeating the same thing, that impression will be formed. And once that impression is formed, then that impression will come as an auto-suggestion, will come as a proposition. And that's how our mind will start becoming our friend. So this is what abhyasa. So when we have sometimes people say, you people are so ritualistic, just uttering the same mantra again and again, doing the same activities again and again. But actually rituals tap the power of repetition. Rituals actually use the mechanical nature of mind and tap the power of repetition. When we keep doing the same thing again and again and again and again, that impression is created. And then what happens is we are able to, we get the inner impetus to do that thing again. So abhyas is one thing. Now, the second part was regulation. Vairagya. Now Vairagya has two aspects. I'll conclude with this and one more point, and then we can have a few questions. That so Vairagya at one level means what I already explained. Is try to keep away from agitating stimuli. That's one thing. Try to keep a barrier, try to keep at least some distance. But second is, Vairagya also means be detached from the expectation of quick success. That it will take time. It's not that, okay, if I had a cough for a week, it's not that I take one pill or take one syrup and my cough is gone. Be detached from the expectation of immediate success. So be patient with yourself. There are impurities and they will be overcome gradually. So we have to be kind to ourselves. And that is why in this case, sometimes it's important that we don't compare ourselves with others. See, for somebody, waking up in the morning may be very difficult. And for somebody else, waking up in the morning is very easy. And the person who can wake up very easily in the morning, that may say, it's a lazy person. But for that person who's not able to wake up in the morning, maybe for that person to fast on Ekadashi is quite easy. And for this person, it's like fasting is like an unbearable nightmare. Just can't fast. So we don't have to compare others' weaknesses with our strengths, or our weaknesses with other strengths. Everybody has their struggles, and we need to just keep endeavoring. So in some cases, our mind will get transformed easily. Some cases, it will be faster. So that's why I said you can compare the mind to a child. I said, don't consider the mind to be an enemy. Compare the mind to a child, and the intelligence can be the parent who is helping the child grow up. Now, when a mother or a father want to raise their children, the two things: feeding and fencing. Feeding means give the child good, healthy food, by which the child will grow up. So same way, abhyas. Give the mind healthy stimuli. Hear Krishna Katha, hear the Bhagavad Gita's wisdom, read uplifting books. So abhyas. And then fencing. The child wants to play, yeah, you can play, but play within this boundary. Don't go onto the road. Don't talk with strange people. Don't take food from strange people. The parents protect the child. So similarly, we protect the mind. Fencing, create boundaries. And when we do this, what will happen is two things. The parents feed the child and fence the child. The child will grow up. And as the child grows up, the child will become responsible. And that's how Krishna says the mind will become our friend. And if you can accelerate the process of the growth of the child. Expect that the child, I'm feeding the child so nicely, in 1 year you should grow 10 years old. It's not going to happen. It will take time. Don't be impatient. That's why Vairagya. Be detached from the expectation of quick success. Be patient. Make sure that you're following the process and be patient. So we will go from success with struggle eventually to success without struggle. Krishna talks about this as Deepo Nivatastho Ningate Sokumasmitaha. Krishna says, as a lamp in a windless place does not waver. Similarly, what will happen is the mind itself is not contaminated. The mind does not have any impurities. Then there will be no agitation at all. And this is the time when the inner war is won. Now, some of us may have been habituated to eat meat earlier. Some of us might be, but many of us, even if we are eating meat earlier, once we start practicing bhakti for a short while, few months, the desire to eat meat itself goes away. Even if we see somebody, if you're going on a train or a plane and you see somebody takes non-vegetarian food. Like nowadays in international planes, we have TV on each seat. Sometimes you may get tempted to watch the TV. What is there? Is this movie, that movie? But if somebody is eating meat, we'll hardly get tempted to eat the meat. What has happened is, even if we were habitually eating it, there's no temptation. What has happened is the mind has become purified. So the mind, just as a lamp in a windless place does not wave, does not flicker. So our mind does not even flicker at that time. So what is that? We all have experienced this success without struggle in one or two areas of life. So now, last point I'll conclude with this is that these four stages. Anyone remember the four stages? What are the first stage? Failure without struggle. Second, with struggle. Third, success with struggle. And fourth, success without struggle. Thank you. We had no struggle in telling this. So, point is that now I talk about these four stages as linear, and they are linear. But at the same time, we may be at different ways with respect to different temperaments. That means, with respect to say like desire eating meat, already come to the level of failure. Sorry, not failure. Success without struggle. But I was at a temple, and the whole community had come to meet me and say that the leader there is very short tempered. Just yells at everyone, and everybody was disturbed by that. Then I find that devotee, the leader, is a friend of mine. So I was talking with him. I told him, many devotees, they feel hurt when you yell at them. Yeah, he says, they should just stop me angry. They should just do what I am telling them to do. Then I will have no reason to yell to them. So there is no awareness that even if people don't listen, still we have to behave in the cultured way. So what was he doing? He was justifying his anger. Now he's a very senior devotee, very dedicated to sadhana. And you can say, and in many other areas, he might be at the level of success without struggle. But here, there is failure without struggle. Because one is justifying. So we all may be at different ages with respect to different limitations. Some we may have gone way ahead, some we may be way behind. But we are all on this journey and we will move forward. We just this abhyasa and vairagya, feed and see. Now we can decide, okay, this particular temptation is what troubles me the most. Then I'll focus on this. I'll make sure that I'm feeding myself and I'm fencing myself. And we will move forward. Assures Krishna is with us. Now, in all this process, I didn't talk much about Krishna. But Krishna is actually helping us. It's not just we trying to nourish our intelligence or we trying to transform our mind. Is Krishna there to help us? And Krishna is the ultimate game changer. If we practice bhakti by Krishna, our own mechanical efforts are one thing. Krishna's mercy can transform things in a dramatic way. So we do our part and we wait for Krishna to manifest a magical mercy. And we will rise from wherever we are to a higher state till we attain. So this, I said, success without struggle. Success with struggle, I called it as tolerance. Success without struggle is transcendence. And we don't even feel the temptation. And that is the stage we will all come to gradually by the process of bhakti yoga. So let me summarize. I spoke today about how the Gita guides us to overcome temptation based on the mind intelligence dynamism. So I started with the inner hierarchy, the sense of senses, mind, intelligence, and soul. So mind intelligence is like the subtle body, the software. So the intelligence is like the purity software, and the mind is like the vulnerable software. So it gets vulnerable, and if it can get contaminated or corrupt, and it can even make the intelligence corrupt. The first thing is success with failure without struggle, where we rationalize, where our intelligence justifies the wrong actions that we are doing. From there, when we move to failure with struggle, at least the intelligence will become strong enough to resist. And this is a progressive stage. Even if our actions have not changed, our intentions have changed. And we need to appreciate that. We need to encourage ourselves for that. Then there will be, so for failure without struggle, I use the metaphor of on a chariot of the mind. For failure with struggle, the boat in a storm. Then we talked about success with struggle. The intelligence becomes strong enough to restrain the mind. That is rivers coming inside an ocean. So even if we don't have higher taste, we can have higher purpose. We can cultivate a higher purpose and use our intelligence to remind ourselves of that higher purpose. We'll be able to say no, even if we are tempted. Kama. Desire comes in, but desire does not go out. And the last stage is success without struggle. That is when the mind becomes transformed. So the mind is like a child. Presently, the child can act also like an enemy sometimes. But the mind is like a child. And how does a parent take care of the child? Feeding and fencing. Abhyas and vairagya. Give the child good food and protect the child from unhealthy influences. So if we do these two things, we don't need raw willpower is not enough because impurities are real contaminants in our consciousness. We need guided willpower to follow the prescription of the doctor, the ultimate Dr. Krishna. Feed itself the positive spiritual things and create boundaries, create barriers towards the negative activities. And by this, gradually, we will come to the level of transcendence, where there will be free success without struggle. And we all may be at different places with respect to different temptations in this inner journey. But wherever we are, we do a and vairagya. We will grow forward and go to get to tolerance and eventually transcendence. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. So do we have time for questions, or should we take a break now? Questions? Yes, please. Who has a question?
Hare Krishna. About sense gratification, there are many ways in which we can senses because we have many senses according to Vedic Science 5. So, like, like, should we look at all kinds of sense gratification with the same equality of vision, or do we discriminate, like, say, a person who is very much attached to prasad and like not to the higher taste but the normal material taste, and someone who is attached to some other kind of sense gratification? So do we discriminate on the basis of someone like might like body massage, someone that is also sense gratification? So how do we discriminate, and or should we discriminate and look at all kinds of sensual gratification with the same equal vision?
Okay. Should we look at all sense gratification with the same vision? Well, that is Mayavad. To see everything one without any variety, that is Mayavad. So, actually speaking, we have to see Falena. How much does a particular indulgence distract me from meaningful action, distract me from Krishna? It is not that everything distracts us. So ultimately, that is our criteria. So we could say this from a material perspective, the criteria is if something is making us do immoral things, immoral or illegal things. From a spiritual perspective, the criteria is if something is making us do anti-spiritual things. So if that is not happening, say, see, we cannot become pure devotees without first becoming devotees. So first we have to connect with Krishna, and then we can think of purifying our connection with Krishna. If we think first of purifying our connection with Krishna, and there's no connection only there. So it's like suppose there is a class, and I was in a temple, and I'm not a very humorous person, but when I make there's some humor in my class, the audience laugh. Devotee was sitting right in the front, and would never. I asked him, ask the other, does does he not have humor? So we don't. Everybody was also. They could check, reminded did not laugh. The other devotees also, other class also. Then finally, he asked me some other questions and I talked with him. And I said, I asked him, you don't laugh in your classes when there are jokes. He said, actually, if I laugh, it's for my pleasure. It is sense gratification. That's why I don't laugh. Now, it is within the context of Krishna Bhakti. It is not that we are just going watching some sensual comedy show and there are some non-veg jokes over there and laughing at it. This is within the context of Krishna. See, Krishna's happiness does not come in our unhappiness. It is not that you want to serve me, you want to my devotee, no pleasure at all. All pleasure is sense gratification, keep it up. No. Actually, in one sense, the best offering that we can give to Krishna is our own happiness. I'll repeat this point. The best offering we can give to Krishna in bhakti is our own happiness. But nowadays, many people pets in the Western world, in the westernized world. And you could go into having pets is a sociological phenomenon. In several in America, like LA and Chicago, among Caucasians is white. There, they have more dogs or cats than they have children. So, an alarming phenomena we will discuss in future session. But the point making is, why do people want to have dogs? Many reasons you can say. The reason is when the master comes back home, this dog is so happy. Dog jumps up and down and wags his tail and moves his paws and runs up and licks the person's face. Hey, this is all unclean. But that master feels happy. When I come home, this dog is so happy to see me. Maybe my spouse is not happy, my children are not happy. But at least this dog is happy to see me. So that master, that owner of the dog, feels happy when they see the happiness of the dog. So similarly, if we consider we are all dogs of Krishna, Tomara Kuku, then Krishna is happy when he sees we are happy. So if there is delicious prasad and we take the prasad and we are happy with the prasad. If there is sweet kirtan and we are happy with the kirtan, Krishna is happy with that. So this is actually a toxic idea that Krishna's happiness requires our unhappiness. That is not the idea. The best offering we can give to Krishna is our happiness. And if within the purview of bhakti, there are some things which give us happiness, then why not? Rather than seeing that as sense gratification, we can see that as Krishna giving us that taste within bhakti. So if it distracts us Krishna bhakti, that is why we have to be a little concerned. And it is not that sometimes we give the example of, I'll conclude this answer this, that sometimes we give the example of, if you scratch an itch, then it will worsen. Well, yes and no. Say for example, if I'm giving a class and suddenly I feel like I should scratch. Now, maybe there's some tingling sensation I scratch. Now, if I scratch once, it is not that in every future class I'll be scratching my cheek. See? That urge came once, it came and went, it's over. If there is already some diseased skin over here, if there's already a rash over here, and then if I scratch, then what will happen is the scratch will worsen the rash, and then I'll get the urge again and again. So it is not that satisfying every desire is going to make us addicted to that desire. If somebody has a desire, oh, I want to eat this kind of food today, okay, eat that food. Not that 24 hours a day you're going to stop thinking of Krishna and start thinking about that food. Then I'm going to get it. Now, if that person is already lonely, that person is insecure, that person has other issues, then they may become a food addict. It's possible. But ultimately, if we are conscious, we are all conscious beings. To be conscious means to have desires. So if our desires can be directed toward Krishna, or if our desires misdirect us from Krishna, then we don't have to be too agitated about those desires. Yes, there is an advanced level of devotion where a devotee desires nothing other than Krishna. But if we try to jump to that level of devotion now, what will happen is we will have no desire at all. We will try to say no to that desire and we have no desire for Krishna also. We just stay in like a Mayavadi no man's land. Okay. Any other questions? So do we take a break and come back to you during the question answer session, or how do you want to do it? It's been quite a long. So 15 minutes. So we will continue with question answer session, then I'll go to the next session after that. Thank you very much. की श्रीमद् भगवद गीता की गौर भक्त वृंद की गौर प्रेमानंद हरे कृष्ण
Chaitanya Charan Prabhu ki. So we'll come back after 15 minutes break.
12:55. 55 is okay. Sure.
55.